It began on a crisp October morning. I was reversing my car out of the driveway when I spotted our neighborhood's notorious HOA president, Linda Grayson, standing in front of my grandmother's house with a clipboard in hand. My grandma, Margaret Sullivan, had called that house home for nearly 40 years. She adored its cozy porch, the little front garden, and especially the new wheelchair ramp that let her move freely despite her limited mobility. We'd installed the ramp just a month earlier, after a fall worsened her arthritis. It was her lifeline to independence. I parked quickly and hurried over, a knot of unease forming in my gut as I approached Linda. When I got close, Linda turned to me with a tight, artificial smile. She was tall, with angular features, dressed in a blazer despite the cool breeze. I asked what was happening. She explained she was conducting an architectural compliance re-VYEW, and that Margaret's ramp might violate the HOA's rules on maintaining a uniform facade. My heart sank. I'd heard tales of Linda's obsession with enforcing petty regulations, but I never thought she'd target something as essential as a wheelchair ramp. Just then, Margaret opened the door, leaning heavily on her cane. The ramp sloped gently from the porch to the driveway, crafted from high-quality wood and painted a muted brown to match the house's trim. It blended in perfectly, at least I thought so. Linda clearly disagreed. She launched into a lecture, claiming the ramp was too large and disrupted the neighborhood's aesthetic. Margaret's gentle face hardened with frustration. "I can barely walk," she said quietly. "I need this ramp to get in and out." Linda waved her off. "We can't let individual changes ruin community harmony," she replied dismissively. Anger surged inside me. Margaret had always been a pillar of this neighborhood, planting flowers by the entrance sign, helping with events, and now Linda wanted to strip away her basic accessibility. Linda made it clear. The ramp had to be altered or removed to meet the HOA standards, no exceptions. Then she strode off, leaving Margaret standing there, shoulders slumped. "I've lived here since before this HOA was even a thing," she murmured, her voice trembling with unshed tears. "Now they want me back on those steps?" I promised her we'd fight it, file a dispute, request a variance, whatever it took. She sighed, easing down the ramp. "I hope so, sweetheart," she whispered. "I can't manage the stairs alone anymore." Seeing her so defeated broke my heart. That ramp was her small slice of freedom. Over the next few days, official HOA notices started piling up in Margaret's mailbox. They referenced vague rules about porch elevations and color consistency, none explicitly banning ramps, but all twisted to label hers as illegal. The final letter threatened removal by the following week if she didn't comply. Margaret was beside herself, calling me in tears. I dialed the HOA's number and got Linda, who was curt and unyielding. She insisted the ramp had to be moved to a less visible spot or replaced with a foldable one, ideas that made no sense. The front door was Margaret's only practical entrance. Rerouting to the side would require expensive renovations. Linda didn't care. I reached out to a local disability rights group, who informed me that laws like the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act often protect such modifications. They had said submitting a written request for reasonable accommodation, citing Margaret's medical needs. We sent it off quickly. Linda's response? A single line: HOA rules trump personal preferences. She ignored the legal argument entirely, obsessed with her vision of a flawless neighborhood, even if it meant hobbling someone in a wheelchair. I began drafting a complaint to the county's Human Rights Office, ready to escalate the fight. Meanwhile, Margaret kept up her daily routine, refusing to let Linda crush her spirit. A few mornings later, I swung by to check on her and froze. The ramp was gone. The porch looked bare, like a piece of it had been torn away. I rushed to the door, spotting a few stray nails on the ground and a note taped to the mailbox: "Ramp relocated per guidelines." Invoices to follow. My pulse raced as I let myself in with my spare key. Inside, Margaret sat on the sofa, tears streaming down her face. She explained that an hour earlier, a crew had shown up with a truck, claiming the HOA had ordered them to move the ramp. She begged them to wait until I arrived, but they ignored her and tore it down. "They said they'd put it somewhere else," she whispered, hands trembling, "but how am I supposed to get out now?" She was trapped. The front steps were too steep for her to navigate alone. Furious, I called Linda repeatedly, but she didn't pick up. I reported the incident to the police as possible theft or trespassing. An officer came, took our statements, and seemed sympathetic but said it might be a civil matter. Margaret and I stood in the Levying room, staring out at the empty porch. She couldn't even get her mail. The HOA's audacity was staggering. Removing an accessibility feature had to be illegal. We filed a formal complaint, and the disability rights group was horrified, suggesting we had grounds for an injunction to restore the ramp. The next day, I noticed a flimsy wooden ramp dumped by the side door, leading into the laundry room. It was useless. Two interior steps blocked wheelchair access, and the uneven, muddy side yard made it a hazard. The angle was dangerously steep, clearly thrown together without safety in mind. It was a slap in the face, a sham to claim compliance. I stormed to the HOA office near the subdivision entrance, but Linda refused to meet me. An assistant shrugged off my demand for their so-called relocated plan. I vowed legal action. Margaret was devastated, stuck indoors and reliant on me for basics like groceries. Then I remembered something. Our new mayor, Daniel Sullivan, shared Margaret's last name. A neighbor had mentioned he was her younger brother. They drifted apart over the years for family reasons, but the connection was real. Margaret rarely spoke of it, valuing her privacy, but desperation pushed her to call him. She explained the HOA's actions, and though the call was short, the mayor's office responded the next morning, promising to investigate potential disability rights violations. Linda, oblivious to Margaret's ties, dismissed the city's inquiries, insisting the ramp was unapproved and that Margaret had agreed to its relocation, a lie. I handed over photos of the original ramp, the HOA's threatening letters, and the useless side ramp to the mayor's staff. They were livid, calling it a clear violation of accessibility laws. Word spread that the mayor was involved, and the HOA board panicked. Some distanced themselves from Linda, claiming she'd acted alone. She countered that they backed her. It was chaos. The following week, Daniel VY cited Margaret in persona warm, if bittersweet reunion. He inspected the shoddy side ramp, shaking his head. "I'll fix this, Maggie," he promised. That afternoon, he held a press conference, decrying the HOA's actions with Margaret beside him, unable to navigate her steps. He announced that city attorneys were reviewing the case for legal violations, hinting at fines or worse for Linda and the HOA. Caught off guard, Linda tried to spin it, claiming Margaret never requested the ramp properly and that it encroached on the sidewalk, debunked by photos showing a 4-foot gap. Her biggest mistake? Calling Margaret some random old lady, not anyone important. Once the press revealed she was the mayor's sister, public outrage exploded. Linda became a punchline, mocked online as the HOA tyrant who picked the wrong fight. Disability advocates piled on, slamming the HOA for flouting federal guidelines. The mayor's legal team found that forcibly removing a mobility aid likely broke local and federal laws. They sent cease and desist letters demanding the ramp's reinstatement. Linda tried an emergency HOA meeting to shift blame, but it flopped when half the board bailed. A city inspector deemed the side ramp unsafe, too steep and unstable, and ordered it removed. With the original ramp gone, Margaret remained housebound, my frustration mounting daily. Finally, the mayor arranged for a city crew to build a new front ramp at no cost, meeting all codes. Cameras rolled as it took shape, sturdy, elegant, and functional. Margaret tested it with her walker, beaming. Linda objected, but the city had the law on its side. The new ramp restored Margaret's freedom, though the ordeal lingered in her memory. The city pursued legal action against the HOA, and I filed a civil suit for Margaret, citing property damage and emotional distress. Our lawyer, backed by the disability group, called it a slam dunk. The removal was unauthorized, and the replacement was unfit, isolating Margaret. Linda's personal liability was in play if she'd ordered the crew herself. She claimed Margaret verbally agreed to the movie, a claim we refuted with witnesses. With Daniel's support, the city weighed misdemeanor charges like trespassing against Linda. Public support for Margaret's sword neighbors brought food, wrote letters praising her grit, and VY-lified Linda as a petty dictator. The HOA board ousted her in a landslide recall vote, VYing her humiliated. They apologized to Margaret, covering some legal fees to dodge more backlash. The civil suit settled with the HOA agreeing to respect ADA rules and paying Margaret a hefty sum more after Linda refused to apologize personally. The payout strained their reserves, but most blamed Linda. She pleaded no contest to city charges, earning a fine and community service. Online, she was a meme Karen in an orange vest, a fictional image that stuck. She sold her house and vanished, her reign over. Margaret and Daniel grew closer, hosting family gatherings. Her ramp became a neighborhood fixture. Kids played on it. Cats napped there. At a barbecue she hosted, Margaret toasted to family, neighbors, and freedom, the ramp a symbol of triumph. The HOA updated its bylaws with Margaret's rule, ensuring future accessibility rights. Her story hit local news, a lesson in HOA overreach and disability rights. Today, she enjoys her porch, tea in hand, the ramp lined with flowers, a quiet victory over Linda's arrogance, a testament to resilience and community.